Hey, it's Chad with AV Escapes. Welcome to episode 4, chapter 6 of our serial No Evil. On the last episode, Sam finally got some sleep. He thought that meant the end of his problem, but Case seemed upset and asked Sam to meet him for further study of his issue. Let's see what happens next. That afternoon was a slow burn of building anxiety for Sam. As the deep red of sunset burned away, replaced by the black char of midwinter night, he pulled on clean clothes and exhaled deeply. The address was a fair distance away. Sam spent the time deconstructing the call with Case. He had seemed off. This time Sam thought it was Case who was scared, and that put Sam on edge again. He got lost in the contemplation, and so the drive seemed nearly instantaneous. It was a plain building, and a little underwhelming. Sam's imagination had anticipated a grand wrought-iron gate and tall spires. In reality, it was one story of beige brick with brass numbers reading 616. The lettering on the glass door said Krista Runnels, Ph.D., and advertised polysomnograms and half a dozen other sleep-related services. Sam parked his pickup on the street a few spaces up from the office. He didn't even get to the building's entrance before Case was leaning out the door to usher him inside. "What's going on, Case?" "Good. You're looking..." He trailed off, then seemed to catch his own thoughts again. "You're looking good. Sit down." He motioned to a small leather couch in the waiting room. "Christ, Billy, what the hell is going on? What's wrong?" "I tried to call," said Case, shaking his head with his eyes glued to the carpet. "Yeah, I saw that, sorry." Case looked up and Sam caught a cascade of emotions on his face. He looked scared, confused. Sam wasn't sure what else, but it made his gut churn. "Man, this shit is so messed up." "Talk, Case. For fuck's sake, you're scaring me." Case looked up and met Sam's eyes for the first time. He stared into him. "I used the spare key you gave me. Fuck. Thought maybe you'd OD'd. Who knows?" "Yeah, I seem to be getting that." "I saw you asleep. You look fine, so I decided to let you sleep and grab some chow. Figured you might be hungry considering there's fuck all to eat in your fridge," Case said disapprovingly, and shook his head. Sam shrugged. It seemed nobody ever passed up an opportunity to shit on his life choices. "Sam, I got back with a bagel, sat it on the counter. I walked to your bedroom, and you were all kinds of fucked up. You were sitting up, eyes closed, flickering. You were whispering. Jesus, you were asleep. You were talking, spouting gibberish." Case shook his head slowly. "You're freaked out because I was asleep? Sleep-sitting?" Case just shook his head slowly. "You opened your eyes, and they were fucking red." "Well, red eyes..." "They were fucking glowing red." Sam looked at Case staring off into nothing. His eyes were almost vacant now. "How the hell do you explain that?" Case finally said, but he wasn't asking Sam. Dr. Krista Runnels walked into the waiting room. Sam immediately noticed her. She had striking eyes. To Sam they looked gray, maybe pale blue. She smiled wide and Case greeted her with open arms. They hugged and shared a warm greeting Sam was vaguely jealous of. Case let go and motioned to Sam. He put out a hand, and the doctor pumped it.
"Glad you could make it,"
she said to Sam.
"Sleeping?"
Sam nodded that he was, and they walked through a large wooden door and into a hallway. Each side of the hallway was lined with 4 doors. One at the opposite end read washroom. Sam had started the day off feeling well, but now he thought he might vomit. Runnels seemed to read his mind and said that he should use the washroom before they got started. Sam walked to the bathroom and promptly vomited. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, made the mistake of looking into the bowl, and retched again. He flushed the toilet, walked to the sink and ran his mouth under it. He swished with water, splashed some on his face, and tried his best to look presentable. The gray rubbery quality seemed to seep back into his face. Case peeked his head into the door. "We're ready for you." Sam expected the room to be stark and white. In truth, it didn't quite go that far. There was a vaguely clinical aspect with various machines and faux wood vinyl flooring. There was a regular bed with a lightly used pink comforter. The walls were salmon-colored and several cameras pointed to the bed.
Okay, Sam. We're going to be monitoring you throughout your sleep.
Said Runnels.
We'll look at all your sleep cycles, any movement, and we'll monitor your brainwaves with an EEG. That should give us a good idea of what's been causing your troubles.
Case and Sam shared a look, equal parts hopeful and desperate.
Generally, you'll go through sleep cycles every hour and a half or so.
Runnels continued.
Bill mentioned you had some unusual behaviors during sleep. What sorts of things have been happening?
Well, the sleep has been an issue for about 3 years. The, unusual stuff is much more recent.
Okay. And what sorts of things have been happening? It's okay, I've heard it all.
He's been doing a bit of sleepwalking and, talking. Case spoke up. I saw it today when I popped in. He turned away and Sam nodded.
Sounds like you have some pretty common symptoms. We should be able to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, I hope so. Thanks, Krista.
Case, it's no trouble. I'm glad I can test out the new cameras anyway.
Sam shuffled out of his clothes reluctantly and sat on the bed. A sleep tech appeared in the doorway, exchanged a quick pleasantry, and began to attach wires across his head and chest. When he was finished, the tech told Sam he could relax for an hour or so, and then the test would start. Sam swung his legs up onto the bed, craned his neck awkwardly in compensation for the nest of wires attached to him, and relaxed. In truth, Sam wasn't that tired. He'd just slept 12 hours, but he figured he'd spent so long not sleeping that he might be entitled to an extra few hours. Besides, this bed was more comfortable than his own. Runnels switched off the lights. Case walked out behind her, closed the door, and left Sam. A few seconds later, Case's voice echoed through a speaker.
I'm gonna head out, buddy. You give me a call when you wake up. You're in good hands with Dr. Runnels and her team.
Hello, Sam. My name is Deb. I'm one of the technicians here. I'll be observing you throughout your sleep. Let us know if you need to go to the washroom during the night, and please try to sleep on your back. Hopefully we'll get 3 or 4 hours of data. Good night.
Sam gave a hesitant thumb up to one of the cameras and rested his head on the pillow. Wired sensors were attached all over him, his temples, legs, and chest all plugged into a computer. The wires were long enough that they didn't force Sam to stay in one place, but they were still distracting enough to keep him awake. He seemed like he'd already been laying there for hours. He laughed when he looked to the corner and saw his reflection in the mirror. He was secured to a panel strewn with wires and slid into a slot at the head of the bed. He imagined being in the state he was in earlier, running to vomit and having his head pulled back, puke ejected like a twisted Pez dispenser. The laugh seemed to do him good. His body started to relax, and his eyes grew heavy. He felt like sleep was a swing, and he was pumping his legs furiously to ride it over the bar. Once he got to the precipice, he would come down hard and bolt awake. He kept thinking of that swing. Or maybe it was a trebuchet. Maybe a canoe. Maybe fishing with his grandfather. His thoughts meandered through each scenario, and soon he was sitting in a handmade rocking chair. He could see for what seemed like miles into the distance. Freshly plowed fields with evenly spaced mounds all the way to a small lake. The trees were lush with large green leaves, and a warm breeze rustled them in unison. The air was fresh here, and he closed his eyes, taking it in long, savoring gulps. "Up for a fish, Sammy?" He knew the voice instantly. He turned to see his grandfather perched in the doorway. He held a well-loved screen door open with one hand and a fishing pole in the other. He waved back and forth enticingly. A smile came across Sam's face that was so powerful it hurt. "Grandma says she'll cook up our catch, no problem. What do you say?" "Sure," said Sam, feeling awash in delight. "Great," said his long-dead grandfather, nearly dancing off the porch and letting the screen slam behind him. Sam rose from his seat and turned back toward the farmhouse. The siding was ancient. The windows had large cobwebs in them, and inside hung a wooden web, homemade with a smiling spider. A word bubble proclaimed, "Spiders are nature's bug spray." The spider wore a red and black checkered shirt and rubber boots on each leg. Sam tried to explore more inside the house when he caught his own reflection in the pane. He recognized himself as a 10-year-old. He remembered this day happening long ago. That's when it finally occurred to him that he was dreaming. It had all seemed so real and natural. Nothing had been out of place, not a whisker unaccounted for. Now that he knew it was a dream, Sam was overcome with dread. He desperately tried to clear his mind and recapture the glee he'd felt earlier, but a part of him knew it was impossible. Behind him the porch creaked, and his grandfather was there thrusting a fishing pole at him. All Sam could see was his grandfather's weathered hand. The ground began to fade. Everything beneath and around Sam evaporated, dissipating into the air like breath on a freezing winter night. All that remained was the hand. It was no longer his grandfather's, and it no longer grasped to a beautiful memory of his youth. It wasn't the hand from his previous nightmares either. It had changed, decayed, to the point where it looked like it was ground beef wrapped around twigs. Sam gagged, wrenching forth as he did. The hand, which had always hung in front of his face, suddenly darted at Sam. It gripped his wrist like a vice, and the pain was like nothing Sam had ever felt. He imagined hot needles penetrating his veins and siphoning a cauldron of lava into them. The voice came, but it came through clear.
Mr. Munson? Sam?
Sleep studies were mostly boring. Deb Power always thought it would be much more interesting. With a name like polysomnography, how could it not be? But lately she'd been feeling unfulfilled with her career choice. Watching cameras and monitoring for any big changes in heart rate and breathing wasn't all that special. She scrolled through her phone mindlessly, flipping back and forth through pages of apps she didn't use. She looked over both shoulders and then took off the phone's hot pink case. A tiny bag of white powder was tucked into the back of the case. Just one bump. She took a small scoop with her fingernail and snorted it, then wiped her nose. She turned on the phone's selfie camera, inspected her face, and then gave a peace sign, pursed her lips, and took a photo. She glanced over her shoulders again and then replaced the baggie, the phone cover, and stuffed the phone back in her pocket. She glanced at the monitor from Munson's room, then immediately back to her computer screen. Wait, what the hell? Munson was sitting straight up. He looked to be sobbing. Poor guy. She grabbed for the intercom microphone and hit the button.
Mr. Munson? Sam?
She watched on the monitor as his head darted towards the sound. She couldn't rationalize what she saw next. The blanket and Sam both seemed to rise. The bed remained where it was, but Sam and the sheet across his legs both levitated several feet. Deb put her hand to her mouth, then grabbed the mic again.
Mr. Munson?
The room flashed with a harsh light, blinding the night vision camera in Sam's room. The light inexplicably burst through the television screen, blinding Deb. She stumbled backwards, hearing a sizzling, crackling sound. A bolt of pain went through her hand and flowed up her arm, and she passed out. What in the hell is going on? Case was screaming into the speakerphone. He was on his way to the clinic already, darting through traffic on the highway. Calm down, Krista.
Just get here.
She said. The tires on Case's SUV squealed as he took a turn hard, nearly losing control. A cargo van nearly mashed in the side of him, and Case heard horns blaring as he maneuvered through the intersection. When he got to the clinic, there was a police car outside. The lights were flashing, and the car was pulled across both lanes. Case didn't bother to find a parking space. Instead, he pulled the Jeep onto the sidewalk and left the hazard lights flashing. On the other side of the road, Case saw a tanker, a group of firefighters conversing around it and packing up equipment. They didn't seem to be in a rush, and Case took that as a good sign. An officer stood inside the door, but Krista called to Case and he stepped aside.
Jesus, Case. I don't know what happened.
Krista said as he walked in. She was pacing, smoking a cigarette and shaking. She continually pulled her coat tighter around her. The smell of ozone and burned wiring hung in the air, and Case could see blue traces of smoke wafting down the hall. Is everyone okay? Where's Sam?
He's okay. He's fine. I'm so sorry, Billy. We don't have any idea what happened. It's a fucking nightmare.
You said this was an emergency. Give me something here, Krista. I just violated about every traffic law there is to get down here.
Deb was in the control room monitoring Sam. I stepped out for lunch, and when I got back, the whole building was full of smoke. She's hurt bad, but they said she'd be okay. It's just her hand.
At that point, she sobbed once, choked back another, and took a long drag from the cigarette. She sank into the couch, took a final drag, and put it out in the potted palm bush next to her.
Her hand was scorched so black. I've never seen anything like it. It must have been some sort of wiring problem. I just can't see how this happened.
Case put an arm around her, his own thoughts circling a drain of glowing red eyes. "Where's Sam?" he said.
Oh yes, sorry. The police are taking a statement. He was asleep. Didn't see anything.
Case left her at the couch. She didn't seem to notice, just lit another cigarette, and he moved to the hallway. The stench of fried electronics was overpowering, and he coughed, bringing his arm around his face like a mask. The breaker panel inside the control room had been forced open haphazardly, and Case inspected it. All the breakers were clearly marked, and he noted that each of the control room breakers were in their off position. Case brought one hand to his face and ran it across his mouth. The room was trashed completely. All the monitors had been blown out. The computer towers were warped from heat, and Case could see pools of cured plastic at the base of each one. Even the LED lighting above him was scarred with black stains. Case motioned to push the computer chair out of the way, and found its wheels had been molded stiff. Then he noticed the microphone, the same one he'd used to say goodbye to Sam. The distinct outline of a hand wrapped around it. The plastic was melted in such a way that it made Case think of the three-dimensional puzzle. Where Deb's hand had gripped the mic, the plastic was completely gone, burnt almost to the metal core. Her slender fingers were stenciled perfectly like they'd been laser cut. Case thought he saw bits of charred flesh still clinging to the edges. He backed out of the room, trying to ease his rolling stomach with one hand. Out of the corner of his eye he saw movement, and when he turned, he saw it was another officer exiting the room where he had left Sam. And that does it for Chapter 6, Episode 4 of our serial No Evil. Let us know what you think in the comments. If you like what you hear, please follow, like, subscribe, click the bell, do all the social media things. But don't stop there. Craft a bow and arrow from a rattlesnake and the steering wheel from a 1986 Dodge Charger and challenge your uncle to an archery contest. The loser has to return to college to learn coding with the one and only goal to craft an algorithm that simply tells everyone online to check out No Evil on AV Escapes. That's all we ask. It's that simple. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you at the next escape.